Is there any public comments?
Yeah.
All right. You got,
Jeff Robert, and I requested Sheila to be on the agenda. She said I could have 15 minutes.
sure, so,
I don't know if it got on the agenda or not.
It is, and it says agenda item subject to board approval, because when I talked with Josh, he said put it on that way, so.
where's that at? on here?
That's on 7B.
Oh, there we go,
Yep.
okay, yep,
I'll wait till then. No problem.
all right.
Or whenever you tell me. I would like to plug in the screen and I have a couple slides. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so hearing that public comment, Jeff is on the agenda for under 7B, and I had that discussion and said because we did not have him prior to the last meeting, so I just said we can ask for that in the public comment section. We'll put him on the agenda just under the board approval. So with that, is there any other public comments? Is there any other public comments? Third and final time. All right, hearing none, we have an approve of the minutes of October 20th.
Let's move. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. James and Matt, by the way. You got it. Okay,
Thanks.
approve agenda.
I do have an addition to the agenda under 7B, C, I'm sorry. For the Whitewater Drinking Water Protection Grant, I do have 2 cover crop payments for approval today.
Approve agenda with
Any
additions.
We did have a board approval on line item 7B. Is there any discussion for Jeff today? He wasn't on, we didn't discuss that the last time coming in. Issues there? All right, so that moves. So we got Matt, or motion made by Matt, second by Lynn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, board reports.
You gonna do consent items?
Oh, we forgot consent items, I'm sorry. Approve consent items.
Okay, for the bills payable for October and November, I have the money for Winona County for my time. I have reimbursement for some office supplies. City of Utica, and this is for the local advisory team meeting that we have. It's,
Just moved, correct?
This one is still the same. This one's on the 19th.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So I mentioned if I had the invoice from her before this meeting, I could give it to her.
Yeah,
She
Utica,
opens
not
the door
Alter.
for me. Yep.
So they charge 100 for that?
Yeah, they do. It's an all-day.
Oh,
They didn't have
no
any
matter what.
half-day rates, no. And then I have 2 cover crop payments, which are on the agenda for approval, but the total for the bills payable is $5,591.
And that has the cover crops in it.
Yes, I did put it, and did I put one on your spot?
This one.
The one with the red on the bottom? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
I move to approve the bills
You have a second?
consent.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Bob and James, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now on to board reports. Start. Happy retirement?
Getting there,
Yeah?
getting there. So,
When's the?
well, actually, the new officers get January 3rd, so theoretically you're there till January 3rd, then the
Right.
new board members take place. So,
That's good. You definitely put your time in. How many years?
26 years, so, with the county board.
That's crazy.
So,
How many committees?
the times that by relax, you know that. But yeah, it's been fun. I'm glad I did it. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Remember the early years, you and I saw weekly, where the DM&E and the railroad and all the
Yeah,
rides.
comp plan, yeah.
Plan, but, no. So, anyway, Sheila said, Laura Padelki is gonna take this place.
Yep, I got the email on that this
Nice
morning,
person.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was my next question. Who's
That's
filling
what I
in?
said. I don't know, no, the committees are, so.
I don't know her.
Oh. Well,
Okay, well, thank you very much on behalf of everybody here. So,
Yeah.
there ain't enough, I don't think, if we combined all the years, might get close to where you're at. All right. James.
SWCD, not a whole lot, just, well, I went over the Murphy wetland bank, which was interesting to find out all the specifics that they have to go through in order to establish a wetland, and sounds like if you want to, it would be a pretty good deal, really, because you can get some good money for 10 square feet, essentially, or something along those lines. But that, and then we had one cost share contract for, it was to do a dairy farm water, basically, to take care of their flush water, or whatever they were calling it. You know, as far as, instead of just letting it go down the gully or whatever into the stream, they worked up a sort of a, basically it looked like a sort of a sprinkler system that would pipe all the water out and then sprinkle it over this 1-2 acre designated spot on their land.
So it's just a catch basin?
No, there's like some sort of storage facility, like, I don't remember exactly, 600-700 gallons.
Is-
That
And then do they hay that in the summer, or they take some feed
yeah,
off or
I
raise
think
it, or?
they've got some covered over.
Oh, that's a new one.
Clark Colson in Wabash County has something similar to that.
Yeah,
But it must
that's
first
the
run
first
off like off a feedlot or something, and then it just.
No, it's more washed down water, I think, part
Out
of
of the parlor water, oh, yeah, yeah, so there's really nothing to it besides a little manure, maybe
Yeah.
a little chemical
Yeah.
on it, so.
So,
Interesting.
That's
Anything else,
about it.
James? Thank you.
Not too much, pretty quiet. Truth and taxation was Tuesday evening, and levy will be at 3%. That's about all we got.
Percent ain't bad, better than 10.
I've been somewhat busy, but normal things everyone does, I guess. Play evaluations and different things. And we went to the Soil and Water Convention. We had 2 winners. We had Helen Mariner, woodland manager, and Heinz's that were conservationists from our area or region. And so that was nice, I guess. And that's pretty much it, play evaluations. But at the convention, we talked about what you all know, all the money, but who's gonna fight over it, so that's everything you know anyway, so I won't go into that. But anyway, it seems like plenty to do.
Anything else? Good. Anything clear? Yeah, let's see, SWCD for us, we hired an administrative assistant, lost an administrative assistant. I kind of saw that one coming, and to be honest, I tried to kind of delay it because I just didn't think that, I knew the person that was being hired and I knew what they wanted to do, and I just didn't see it as a fit, and I thought, well, we'll have to just let it play out. I gave it a year to 2 years, it went 2 months. So that was giving everybody benefit of the doubt. So anyway, so that was a little disappointing, but yet, you know, maybe it's a good thing. Somewhat quiet, I guess, kind of business as usual at the SWCD. As Matt alluded to, threw my name in the hat. Steve Jacobs asked me to run for county commissioner. So there was a kind of a few of us there that talked about it, including Matt's brother Mike, and Priscilla put a hard no to that. So, well, they're moving anyway, so.
He won't be around enough.
Yeah, he won't be around. So anyway, Mike, and before I said yes, I called his brother Mike and talked to Mike too. And I said, hey, what do you think? He goes, no, you need to do this. So, so long story short, it's made it well known that I'll be running for county commissioner. So if I were to get into that position, I think it would probably just switch my position here from being an SWCD member to just the board. So then we'd have to, you know, so that would change that. So we did have 2 people retire on our board this year, and so we had 2 good candidates come back in on the SWCD. Both of them who I know, Tom Scarpenzini is a long-term dairy farmer, kind of in the mid-southern section of Winona County. And then Ross Graydon, who farms in the central north, actually as the crow flies, about 10 miles from where Steve lives, straight east, but more in the northern part, Oak Ridge. So Ross is a super great guy. I've known him for many years. Kids went to school together with his kids. So anyway, so we're lucky to get 2 really good new current and former dairymen on our SWCD board. So we're pretty happy about that. Yeah, and then these little green packages, these are poisonous, so everybody just pass them down here, and I'll take care of these for everybody. So, that's about all I have.
Matt might be falling asleep here shortly.
Well, he's retired, he don't count. We just push him out in the trees now.
That's what I tell people, I'm not retired, I'm just tired. Right? I'm just tired.
So when will the election be for Winona County Commissioner?
Well, so the filing actually last night at the commissioners meeting, they rubber stamped it through just on the consent agenda. And so from what I understand, Steve's gonna hold on until he has to, until he has to resign. He'll be moving on, and that'll open it up in that January timeframe. I thought the filing was actually the 2nd week of January. Now I heard last night that it's not till the 2nd week of February.
Oh, okay.
Now I could be wrong. So the speculation. So I have not got the official from Sandra, and to know when that is. So regardless, if 2 people run, 1 or 2 people run, obviously the election's the 1st week of May. If more than 3 run, or more than 2 run, then that will become the primary, pushing the election off until August.
Oh, till August?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Exactly. So the board could be, the county board could be a 4-person board for 3/4 of a year. So, which would not be good. So from what I've heard, there are 3 potentials running. So we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. And if it doesn't, it'll be too early. So I know in Goodhue County, they had a member of their board pass away, and
Paul Jones
yeah, there you go.
and Sheila. Oh, I think it was Sheila. I can't say her last name right now. Anyway.
Yeah, but they actually are going to have their election in February, I believe. So they
Okay.
were able to fill that fairly quick. So, but I think that was just a little bit of the preliminary stuff, that just the difference in how they set it up. So they're going to recover from that a little bit quicker. So that's the time frame. So it just depends on who files. So we won't know that until, I thought it was going to be January, but potentially February. So do you have an answer to that? I can't seem to get a straight answer.
That's the first, when you just mention it now, I didn't realize it wouldn't be till February for filing.
So,
That's new,
yeah, it's just a matter of,
yeah.
I'm assuming, getting in front of the right person and getting that answer then. So, yeah. You'll see a deal come out in the Post next week. Winona Post, just a press release, and I did one in Daily News, and then once those 2 post, I'll kick one on the Rochester paper too, so I'm just kinda spanning them out so they're not all at once. So that's what I got. So, all right. Any other topics on board reports?
Well, since we were talking about elections, we
Sure.
had two contested ones, but both of the incumbents were reelected, so.
Okay. Is that good? Think so?
So, from my perspective, I guess, yeah.
All right, on to line item 7A, financial update. Sheila.
Okay, for the money market and the checking for October, our total was after deducting for what's committed to other grants, $95,029. And for the end of November, that amount was $95,600. That's all I have, nothing earth-shattering.
95.6. All right, any discussion on the financial report? Pretty simple last couple months.
Yeah, well, when the checks go out, and then that second month is kind of like the same.
Juggle a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. On to line item B. Jeff Robert, 15 minutes. Got a small presentation, Jeff?
Know how this thing works back here?
I have no idea. That's a new piece of equipment for me.
Yeah, 118. So I got 118, Jeff. The rest of you, go ahead.
Do you need a chair for that up there?
So Bob, so who passed away in Goodview County? A county commissioner?
Pardon me?
A county commissioner passed away in Goodview County?
Yeah, Paul Drodos. He was diagnosed with cancer in
Mhm.
July, I think. And so he appointed this Sheila, I think it's Sheila, to take his space or spot. And then that's kind of how they got a jump
On the election.
on their election.
I missed it, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
power down here in front.
I thought so, but.
Oh, that didn't do anything. And I don't
Well,
know.
did. Looks like a
Well, you
bunch
got
of-
this plugged in? What's this right here?
Oh, it's not plugged in.
Yeah, you're qualified to be commissioner.
There we go.
Yep.
If you can plug in something, you're gonna be ready to be.
It's like the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation when he's trying to plug in all the Christmas lights.
Well, I asked at the desk and he doesn't know, he's never turned it on, so.
That's on, we got her plugged in, so.
Yeah, we got something to go.
Thinking anyway.
So,
Yep.
On?
Yeah, it's thinking.
There you go. Oh, this is a whiteboard.
Code scanning would be, but I don't even know what it said.
Oh, the QR codes?
Yeah, it said something
What
where
are
you
you
can catch it
plugged
to
into
here.
here?
Yeah.
HDMI 2.
I sure.
Okay, good job,
We got
Jeff.
you.
Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff Broberg. I'm a licensed professional geologist. Spent almost 30 years as an owner of McKinney Betts engineering firm in Rochester. And retired in 2018 and started a nonprofit called the Minnesota Well Owners Organization to help private well owners ensure that they've got clean drinking water. And we started this out with some well testing clinics and an idea that we would have a focus on source water protection. And we found that people didn't like that. They thought source water protection is a regulatory approach that's going to force people to do something and that it's blaming people for water. And we changed our narrative and our approach to say we're only concerned with the water at your kitchen sink. Your water at your kitchen sink. And now we've got 13 clinics under our belt in the last year and a half with over 1,300 people coming. And we've got local people bringing their neighbors' water to be tested for nitrates and chlorides. And the other thing we do is we bring experts to these water testing clinics, mostly retired professionals, water professionals, engineers, geologists, plumbers, to talk with well owners about what their water problems are. But what I really wanted to talk about today is some of the problems in western Winona County in particular. We have kind of a crisis here, and it represents a systemic failure that we're all part of, and we all have to play some kind of role in a solution. I'm going to talk about what's critical and what's missing, what these systemic failures are, a little about the fish kill, and some of our drinking water problems. We just want to have safe water for everybody at their kitchen sink. And what we know is that safe water at a source doesn't guarantee safe water at your tap. Oftentimes contamination is introduced from a poorly constructed well or a treatment system. We get chlorides backing up on water treatment systems, we get a bacteria. But it's also true that bad water at source doesn't require us to drink that bad water. There's good treatment options. I have a reverse osmosis, I have a 400-foot deep well. 1.2 miles from here has had up to 22 parts per million nitrates in it. It's down to 17 now after I've done some things to help, but it's not getting any better. My well depth is about the same elevation as the wastewater treatment system drain field in the park. I'm not going to drill to get better water. At 580 feet, it's still 8 parts per million. I'm going to have to treat my water, and it's cheap. It costs me about $1 a day to do that. So what's critical with this and what's missing, and unfortunately they're kind of the same thing. We don't have effective public engagement about these issues. There's a lot of bias and denial and avoidance of the issues. We have a lot of good data sources, but we don't have a lot of resources. Without that public engagement, we're missing the education of private well owners that they are the sole operators, owners, and are solely responsible for their drinking water. Nobody else. A city has the health department, communities have that. Us private well owners, we don't have any of that. So what's going on though? I think we have a real problem. Some of the worst water I've seen across the state of Minnesota is in western Winona County. This summer, we had a 3rd fish kill in 6 years outside of Lewiston, just off I-90 in Rush Creek. 2019, Garvin Brook. 2016, South Branch of the Whitewater. 2019 in Trout Brook. All of these fish kills are related to the same thing. They all occurred during the summer. It involved application of manure on new hay ground nearby application of fungicides with aerial application followed by a rapid, intense rain. Kills the fish. We know what's going on with these things, and more important, we know how to prevent it. And I think we're taking a wrong approach by taking an enforcement action against anybody. I don't know a single farmer who wants to be involved in a fish kill. Nobody does. But we know too on how to advise people on how to avoid these problems to occur. Some of the things aren't as easy. Back in the 70s, we had sinkhole collapses of sewer lagoons. Altura 74, Lewiston 76, millions of gallons of sewage right in the sinkholes. These were design failures. The engineers and geologists didn't know that the sinkhole risk occurred. And it really started the whole Geologic Atlas program to identify what those risks are and where they are. But we're still struggling with this decades later. 90s, Lewiston was still talking about not putting their stormwater into sinkholes. And their plan was to seal them up, but the fact is the water is still going into the ground. It doesn't run off the surface. On my farm right up the hill, the water does not come off the surface on my farm. It drains into a rocky drainage way and it goes right in the ground. And there's no surprise that my water is contaminated. The township well testing. Percentages of wells over 10 parts per million. With that initial testing down in Fremont, half of the wells, 47% Utica, 34 Rochester. We have all of these townships where a huge number of people are drinking contaminated water and they don't know it because they don't test and they're afraid to deal with it because they're afraid of the costs. And we have municipal groundwater contamination. Lewiston's an interesting case. 20 years ago, nitrates in their wells at 600 feet. They replaced them with 1,100 foot deep wells that have radium in them. So they had to mix the water to make it safe to drink. Well, they've closed the nitrate wells and they're treating the radium now, but at huge public cost. This spring, Utica got the notice that their wells are over the 10 parts per million and over the action limits, and they're required to do something. They're talking about replacing the well. There's a responsibility to do something within the Duismas. These are the drinking water supply areas. This is the one for Utica. It's 11 square miles. And the promise of the Ag Department is if we have these high nitrate levels, we get the community to work together in those Duismas and reduce that. But we're not. The Ag Department told me just last week they're probably not going to do anything because they're going to drill a deeper well. But there's 60 households out in that area that are drinking contaminated water. We tested a well 15 years ago in that area that had 80 parts per million nitrates on an Amish farm. These are systemic problems. Here's Utica's water tests. Nitrates on this scale, they trigger action at 5.2. They've been at that level since '93 and they've not done anything to help that. This is the 10 parts per million. They've been at that level in one of their wells for over a decade. And we're not addressing the public health risk that's occurring with this. We don't have a very good impression about what's going on to fix this. It's a three blind mice. It's everybody wondering what to do. We have fish kills 4 and 6 years. We've got groundwater contamination everywhere. And all we talk about is the uncertainty of this, but we know the things to do to fix this. We know private well owners are going to have to treat their water. We need to help them. We're not going to drill our way out of this. We're not going to make best management practices our way out of this either. We have common causes of these things and we need to be communicating them to the government, to the people, so that they know that these interactions of the sources, groundwater, surface water interaction is what's contaminating our water. It happens fast here. We have tools. These are the maps from the soil survey showing sensitive soils, limitations for manure management and nutrient management. You take special, it doesn't say you can't spread stuff there, it says take special action to control those risks. Some of these are slopes, some of them are depth to bedrock, some of them are proximity to sinkholes. There's things that we need to do And we have lists and guidelines for all of these things for people to manage. And when I asked the Winona County feedlot officer if this is being used, they said, oh, that's old stuff. We don't do this anymore. So we're not serving people to warn them of the risks. The biggest thing we could do as water managers is to help people understand and avoid the risks so that they can manage it themselves. Private well owners have to do it themselves. Well, the Windlassee plan is out and some of you people are on the committees. The problem I see here is it has 36 priorities. And the funding levels for the things that have anything to do with groundwater protection are practically non-existent because they used a model about the edge of field soil loss. That isn't our problem here. Our problem is the infiltration and rapid interaction between surface and groundwater. We're hoping they take the advice and they change these things in the plant, but we need people to be paying attention to this, and we need a risk management approach that's totally missing out of this. Risk management 101 is likelihood versus the impact. And when you have things that are intolerable impacts, routine fish kills, groundwater contamination, you take efforts to avoid it. You do the communication, you do the outreach, you do the things to avoid it. The economist had a quote that I like. He said, the difference between risk management and strategic management is risk management, you have to understand the failures and prevent them. And you do everything to prevent them. In strategic management, you try to look for opportunities and you look at everything through rose-colored glasses. We're taking the rose-colored glasses approach and hope that we can do this is not a strategy. The watershed plan talks about 8,000 acres of nutrient management plans in a 400,000 acre watershed. That will do nothing to help our groundwater. The Pollution Control Agency advises we need 80% compliance to reduce this. The Whitewater, the Windlassee plan says we should reduce nitrogen application 19 tons a year. That's ridiculous. They spill 19 tons a year within 5 miles of the fertilizer plant every year. That's not going to fix it. We need people to take ownership of their own. And here's an idea that was presented to me that I like, and it's a Smokey the Bear plan, where instead of saying you're going to prosecute people, let's spend our efforts warning them. And there's good tools to do this. The runoff risk assessment that the Ag Department has. You can zoom right in on your farm and it uses the 1-day, 3-day, and 5-day forecast and tells you what the risk is for spreading, whether it's manure, pesticides, whatever. We have all kinds of tools that can help people, and unless we start focusing on getting people to do this themselves, we're not going to fund programs and projects that do this. This is a great tool, this risk management runoff tool. I use it for planning field work up in northern Minnesota because I can see the 3-5-day forecast and see when things are going to work and run out, and we should be using this. We should be helping people do this. But we're making this bad water the norm by not addressing it. And we're creating a culture of distrust and fear by saying we're going to prosecute you. We don't want to do that. We want people to do this to protect their own family, their own well, their own community, and to tell them specifically what we can do to do that better. So who's failed in this? I failed. I mean, the landowners and farmers have failed, and the municipal water suppliers and the private well owners have failed to protect our own interests. Just a month ago, a young guy came to me and he asked, I just took 37 acres out of the CRP. He asked if I'd be interested in rotational grazing. He'd come in and set up the fences, a cow-calf operation. I think that's a great idea.
Jeff, your time is,
Yep.
you're way over
This
here.
is my last.
I was good with everything until that slide. So, time is done, Jeff.
My point is, he won't rent my farm
Hey,
because of
time
my
is
water.
done, Jeff.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? I got one thing. I think it's all good, but when you make Winona County out to be the way it is, then you begin to put a lot of very good people in here, including myself, that spend a lot of time trying to help people out, and you call us a failure, I don't have a whole lot of time for that. Thank you very much.
And if I can respond, I'm a failure too.
Yeah, but that's not the message I'm just done. Thank you. Any other discussion?
I was just curious, in the fish kills, do they actually take fish and lab test and see what actually for sure?
It'd be interesting to see what that actually is. And, you know, the thing of it is in Winona County is completely different than Olmsted County. We've got a totally different battle that we deal with. It's very unique territory. And Jeff, my suggestion to you, and this is, you can take this for what it's worth, but anytime you give a presentation and you begin to single people out, it becomes very hard to get support behind the circle. So whether you have intentions of that to say that people have failed, you know, you made the comment that we've all failed, but you've definitely singled out some people towards the end. And I would just suggest, this is just my suggestion, you can take it for what it's worth. But offending people that sit here and try to help every single day and virtually donate their time to try to make these things better, and then you put it up on a screen, that's just not a wise way to be. I was actually really appreciating your presentation. I thought it was actually pretty good. And you know, I can definitely agree with a lot of points because everybody knows here that I am against enforcement.
Yeah.
And I want that.
Yeah.
That is not the way we put professional things together. We don't run around as boards and individuals and start blaming and pointing and calling people failures. It's very unprofessional.
I'm going to disagree strenuously because risk management requires an assessment of
There's
the
different
failures.
language. There's different language that you can use
I
other
get
than
it.
failed.
Yeah, I get it. I've been accused of that before, and I will again.
And that's probably why you're not getting very far with your
Well,
agenda.
we are getting far, is
Well,
the question.
I'm not saying that you're not getting far, but as far as you maybe could be, because you're drawing lines
Yep.
in the sand.
Well, and
And I know this because I talk to other people with how your reputation
sure.
sits.
Yeah, full price.
So maybe you should try a different approach.
Yeah. Well,
Because I was attacked on that board twice, and I know what my intentions are. And actually, some of our intentions line up.
yeah, I'm sure they do.
So maybe you should try a different approach. That's my suggestion.
Well, and here's my suggestion is that we apply a radius around every private well as a priority for instituting best management practices. And let people do that as a volunteer basis.
I appreciate all that, but you're not going to get there by calling people failures.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? All right, moving on. Whitewater Drinking Water Protection Grant update.
Okay, so I have two cover crop contracts, and I will pass them around. These are the final year for each one. You can see which ones there. So this is two of them in Winona County. Maddie did the certification and everything on them to make sure that they were done correctly. John Shell and Aaron Farnham.
Boy, old John, he's really stepped up
He has.
since his dad has passed, and
Yeah.
you know, he's got a little, you know, him and Bob are there. But talk about a young guy that just kind of got thrown into taking over the farm after Steve passed away. And he's really done well for himself. I'm proud of that kid. I've known him since he was a little kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's $900 for each of them, and this is that final year for their cover crop contracts.
Gotcha.
And the other individual who, under that same grant, who had septic system repair work, we're gonna have to wait till spring on that, but everything's good to go. They even staked it out in the field, in the yard where they're gonna put it.
Sure. Excellent.
So that should hopefully happen soon.
Any discussion on that?
These need approval, and then they also will need your signature, Josh, on the
Correct.
front page.
Any other discussion on those?
Thank you, guys.
You bet. I'll move for approval of the two cover contracts.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by Lynn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, local advisory team grant update.
Now, the 319 nitrogen reduction.
Oh, shoot, I checked, for whatever reason, I'm one off on my checks and I keep going to the next
That's
one. I'm
all
sorry,
right.
319, I'm
Yeah.
gonna scribble that off so I don't get ahead of myself again. 319 reduction grant.
So after the last meeting, I was able to finish the final report for that grant, and that is included in the packet. So that starts off, I forget which page it's on in our packet, but it's got the color photo on the front. And this is what I submitted to the PCA for that grant, and that had the cover crops with that. It had this, the test strip trials for farmers, and also farm economic education. And then just to kind of show you, these are the final list of recipients that received funding from that last $30,000 from the grant. Oh, thank you. So, anyway, I just want to make sure that you each had that final report.
So this is all the cover crop, is that, or what?
No, that's
this-
those that signed up for the Riverland Community
Farm
College.
Farm
management
Yeah.
team thing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Those are, the column that totals up to $30,000, that's what they each received. And it was kind of prorated based on how many, what they signed up for, so everybody was treated equitably. That was interested in signing up for that. And Ryan Steele said that he'd be able to come to probably our April meeting and give a presentation on, everybody that signed up and got this, even it was tailored to what they wanted for classes, but then each one also will be getting instruction or guidance on nutrient management to save money, bottom line inputs. And so he'll
Really
give a,
good names on there.
yeah, so he'll give a presentation.
I know every one of the names.
Do
Yeah,
you?
they're good, yeah.
Oh, good.
They're really good people, yeah. Surprising, but that's good, yeah.
Mhm. So that's all I have for that grant.
Good.
So I was just wondering, what's the in-kind money talking about?
In-kind money in the report refers to staff time that was done for the project but not charged to the project. And also in-kind is for the farmers that participated in the cover crops. The cover crop did not, paid up to $30 an acre, so anything above and beyond that was their nickel, as well as the fuel to put that cover crop on. So that was what we calculated for in-kind for the farmers, and then, because I know, for example, Skip, some of his staff, or some of his SWCD staff time was counted as in-kind when we did field day events and things like that. So that was all, basically the 319 grant, they'll give you the money, but then they want to see some skin in the game from the locals, as in donating. I don't want to use the word donating. We count the money, count the hours, but it's counted towards in-kind for the grant.
Contribution from all sides. really.
Yes, definitely. And there was some of my time too, that one of the line items for the grant, I had get paid for the administrative, but then there was, I think it was the farmer outreach piece. I counted that as in-kind for my time.
Any other discussions? All right, hearing none, moving on to local advisory team.
Okay, the local advisory team meetings. We had the first one for Elgin on Tuesday, and there were 12 people in attendance. And I thought it went very well. Mike Mike Cruz and Don Bernal, who presented here at the board, were the presenters. And they just kind of said, okay, this is the groundwater protection rule, and because the Elgin well has been over 8 parts per million on 4 different occasions this past 10 years, this is why we need to start these local advisory teams. And the homework for the people in attendance were, each one got a binder, and there was a whole slew of best management practices, and then some alternative practices. And so the challenge was, okay, we want for the next meeting, please review this list and let us know what you've tried and whether it worked or didn't work. And that will go from there, because the bottom line is all the BMPs that we're gonna do are gonna make sense for the farmers as far as being optimizing for input your bottom line, and that they make sense and that they're effective. And then also, once we start having some other meetings, there will be some hydrogeologists that will be giving, I don't know who all Don and Mike have lined up, but if there's anything that farmers that have land in the Duisma want to try, just to see if it works, there will be funding to be able to, let's try it and see what happens. So that's how it went. Everybody that was there was very engaged, and they asked a lot of excellent questions. And a lot of the same questions that were brought up here. And I can just kind of, one noted that, hey, my son has this farm and I have that farm. And in between us is a dairy operation that does a lot of manure application. And he says, I have my water tested and I can see where there's, impacts from manure. And they wanted to know how the Duisma boundaries were established. They want to know about the city of Elgin. Would that be regulated under this plan? How do we deal with the lawn people? I think that's how they called it. And then they wanted to know more about the groundwater. They wanted to know where the Jordan goes, where the hot spots are, which I thought was a really interesting question. And then one thing, when the BMPs are adopted, and then they have 3 growing seasons to implement the BMPs on the land, 80% of the land, except for soybeans. And that's kind of how the rule is written. And one farmer asked, he says, well, if we do all soybeans, and you're encouraging more soybeans, well then you're getting more erosion. And so that was kind of... Maybe.
I don't know, I tried cover crop on mine, but it was sure sweat to wonder if it was ever gonna sprout. I think I finally got going.
Yeah, so anyway, they were very good, and like I said, asked a lot of great questions. And so my job was to write down all of their questions and their concerns. And Don and Mike are communicating and letting people at the state know, hey, this is what it's like. These are the concerns at the Elgin Duisma, and these need to be addressed. And so nobody here went, no. But I was there, I took notes. And
Otherwise I would have sure went.
yeah. And so, and then we were supposed to have one this morning, but that got canceled due to weather and illness. So that will be held for Altura on Tuesday at the Altura City Hall, and then the one on Monday is for Utica, and that's at the Utica School, and they're both 10 to 12.
Trying to plan around the reschedule, and that one I rescheduled some stuff to
I
do
know.
this one today, and then
happened,
it got
yeah.
canceled, and so I knew I wasn't gonna be here.
Mhm.
So we'll see, I'm supposed to be up in by
Yeah.
November, so.
But I thought the meeting was very good, and I really appreciated all the questions that the farmers asked.
Yep.
And you can tell that they're very thoughtful, and they were all super tuned in and engaged and very smart. So I thought that was good.
Good. Anything else? Any discussion?
A lot we don't know about.
That's right,
Where
and
the
that's
water
what we
runs,
acknowledged,
like the
yeah.
hotspots or whatever, that's really a wild variable to know what's
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah,
I'll
they
say
did
it-
say that the Elgin area does not have any known direct contamination sources, like a sinkhole or anything like that. And if there are any sinkholes, they're not receiving any contaminations. But they did have a map, that it's a state map that you can kind of zoom in, it's an interactive map that shows in their DUSMA the areas where there's coarse soils. And so that, it was kind of more in the southeast swath of the DUSMA, that might potentially be, something where there's more leaching going on perhaps.
It's higher organic matter, you would think, better structure in the soil, you'd think would help the situation. I mean,
Right.
Compared to somebody with like 0.8 or whatever.
Well,
Right,
it comes down to humus is what it boils down
Right.
to, but
yep,
yeah, it's, I could appreciate some of the things that Jeff was saying, and actually a lot of the things I can agree with what, he was saying, because there are multifaceted, but to try to narrow it down and say, this is the only thing. I agreed with the regulation side, but we go back to the uniqueness of that area versus a Lewiston versus an Altura
Right.
versus a Olmsted versus, you know what I mean? And that's the challenge, to try to come up with one system.
right,
Because there isn't one system. So the backwards approach that he has, I agree with. When you've heard me say this at the SWCD meetings, I can always treat the water at my tap.
right,
I have time. We have to keep the economics and land management and ownership into play. We can't
Right.
regulate our way into that.
right,
So for right now, the education on what this, I look at these duismas and I say this could turn really ugly fast if we allow it to. Right now, we can control the water. We can control whole farm water. We can control whatever we want by putting systems in relatively inexpensive to clean up what we need to clean up, buying us time to backdo and figure out how we can become better farmers. Because if nitrates are getting in the water, well, that's lost money to a farmer.
right,
That's what it boils down to. If phosphorus is getting in the water,
yeah,
that's lost money to a farmer. So that's the educational piece to this, to go back and
Right.
say, let's make more money, farmers, right? That's the way I look at it. In the meantime, I can control the health aspect through this other process until the two come together. What scares me with the duismas is that if we don't get enough volunteer people, and the laws are already in place that they can make it law, they're gonna say, well, not enough people are doing it, or even if enough people do it and they don't see the result they want, then they make it law, or they continue to broaden it out,
Yeah.
broaden it out, before all the circles are drawn in. So that's right, I'm gonna keep saying it every time these come up, I hope we don't get to that point.
yeah.
Not really.
And I might add that Mr. Broberg's presentation, he had, I don't know if you noticed that, I've already seen that PowerPoint. He included it in one of his comments to the WinLAC.
I didn't appreciate the fish kill capital in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's what he's going around saying. But that presentation he gave to the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. And so the WinLAC, during our comment period, we received a comment from them, and they wanted to make DUSMA about boundaries.
I'm not against the duismas. To me, it's an eye opener. I just don't like the fact that there's a law put into place that says if voluntary application of these BMPs doesn't happen, we can make it law. It seems like that one snuck under the farmer's nose somehow into this whole scenario. And I think if people would have known that law was coming into place, we would have saw a lot of pushback on it. It's just, it is what it is. So I just hope we don't go down that road. So, cool. No, I'm hoping to get to the Utica one for sure. And that's, which one did we schedule? We scheduled, today we're supposed to be in Altura.
Utica's on the 19th, Altura's on the 20th,
Altura's on
10
the
to 12.
Do I have that in my phone correctly?
I don't know.
19th, I have Utica.
Yep, that's correct.
And that one's where?
At the Utica Old School,
Oh, yeah.
The
the school.
Yeah, I forget what they called it exactly. But
Yeah, it's down the main drag there, and so.
Yeah, it's on the south side.
Yeah, I thought it'd be okay. Any other discussion on that? I'm glad people showed up. The right people showed up.
Yeah.
Farmers showed up.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did, and like I said, I was very impressed with everybody there. They asked really, really good questions, and they brought up a lot of good points that you brought up earlier. One thing that I thought too is that one said, they had a conversation about cover crops, and he says, well, he said if you so we plant cover crops and it pulls up nitrate, it also pulls up P and K, and then if it doesn't break down, then it can't be used by the crop. And that one I wasn't too sure
So the
on.
very simple answer to that is that it's the complexity of the carbon. So simple bound carbon, simple structured carbon, hemicellulose, even into cellulose, is a very stable, extremely stable way to hold on to nutrients, but very plant available through a rapid degradation of that carbon material. When we grow something up lignified, just think of like this table, it's got a lot of very dense carbon, which is what makes it hard. This takes a different set of, these are what I explained, it takes termites can eat wood, but other bugs can't, right? So in that world, it turns from a bacteria food, simple, floppy, young, lush, simple carbon, okay? As it grows up, it goes into complex carbons, which are now more fungal-based foods, which is why you hear me talk about the onset of these fungicides. I have fungicide, I sell fungicide, I promote fungicide where necessary for the economic return for farmers. But I also go around and say, look, that $20 pass of fungicide you killed off because it's non-selective. The fungi that's breaking down the residue, stopping the train, making the residue problem worse, tying up more nitrogen, then you go to co-op, buy more nitrogen, the nitrogen's end up in the water, you lose money. It's just, so I say that $20 pass is not $25, that's a $35 pass. You'll make $120 on it, but you don't get to keep 80 of their, you're gonna spend that because you gotta get it going. So if they leave that cover crop, get big and tall and complex, you're right, it's a slower degradation to recycle those nutrients. But that is one of the most phenomenal things you can do to feed a crop, because it is bacteria food. Bacteria is what drives nutrient exchange, root formation. It holds it in a vegetative, or what they call coated form for nutrients, which is one of the absolute best ways to hold a nutrient. So it's very similar to trying to feed mineral to a cow or feed a plant to a cow. The cow can extract almost all the nutrients out of a plant, alfalfa, grass, hay, but if I feed a rock to a cow, I only get a certain percent of that mineral out of that bag. Think of it that way. So the more complex it is, it's more like feeding rock. The more simple it is, it's more like feeding the material.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wrote down the comments and I thought, I just didn't understand that one.
So those young cover crops are plowed down like this. Those are highly available, very stable nutrient base back to the next growing crop.
Question, I guess, because I read an article in the John Deere Forum magazine about some guy that's got 1,100 organic acres somewhere south of here, like south of Iowa maybe, and he said he leaves his covering it as high as possible, and because it takes up more, and isn't all available. But then, what if you're not just thinking 1 year, you were thinking like 10 years, and you kept doing something like that? Then would it like slowly release and end up being an amount worthwhile after time, do you think?
So you got to remember that carbon complexity also has a nutrient tie-up, and the biggest one is nitrogen. So it takes nitrogen to break down that carbon. Everything has a carbon and nitrogen ratio. We do, this table does, this has carbon in it. Okay, stainless steel has carbon in it, plastic. So the more complex the carbon, the more nitrogen it's going to take to break it down, and the more nitrogen it's going to take if you need nitrogen in a crop, such as corn, wheat, oats, barley, something like that. This young little oat out there, flopping around, vetch, doesn't matter what it is, the carbon complexity of that does not really build organic matter or humus in the soil. It is going to feed the crop and feed it very well. It's going to create a nice loose cumbrious soil, but it's not going to sustain the carbon intensity into that soil. This is going to bring and stack in that carbon, because it's like, how do I say it? it's bringing in the complexity of the carbons that can break down over time and actually create the humus, and the humus is what you want. That's your sponge, your water retention, your nutrient retention long term. So this builds soil matter, complex, that'll build organic matter, it'll build topsoil. This will do a small amount of that, but it will heavily feed the crop. Stop erosion, wind erosion, things like that. So it all, as crazy as this sounds, you always hear me say this, carbon is king. And the type of carbon is going to determine the job in the soil. That's what it boils down to. And the easiest way to explain it is looking at a cow. When we look at feeding a cow, because I'm a former dairy nutritionist, hemocellulose, 95% digestible to a cow. Cellulose, 50%. Lignin, 5%. Think of soil and organic matter the same way. Young little floppy oat, 95% digestible, real fast in the soil. Cellulose, something about yay tall typically, so the corn crop that's kind of starting to convert, but it's got to start stacking complex carbons to stand up. And that old corn stalk plant up here, that's your lignin. Does it make sense?
So, Josh,
Yeah.
we talk about carbon in the air, like an acre of forest, what that takes out of the carbon, right? Versus corn is a grass. Everybody's talking about savanna prairies now. Now, does an acre of corn take more particles out of the air than an acre of grass?
Acre of forest or acre of grass?
All three of them, which would be the,
I don't know the exact numbers on that, but I'd like to turn that recorder off to give you my honest opinion.
well,
The reality of it is that crops need carbon dioxide.
Yes,
Crops need
yes.
carbon. And cleaning this all up is the same problem. We think it's so bad, but in essence, it's very good for things growing.
well, again, my point is carbon dioxide is, corn is a grass,
Sucks it
it
in.
sucks it in.
That's right.
Does an acre of corn, which is a taller grass basically,
Mhm.
pull in more than an acre of savanna prairie or an acre of forest?
Oh, forest, yeah.
So has anybody ever done that kind of
There
research?
is actually, and I know I've read some articles on that years ago
Yeah.
that they were comparing those types of things. And I know that the amount of CO2 sequestering from an acre of corn, especially like in that hard, pre-tassel growth stage, it is phenomenal the amount of oxygen it's putting out and the amount of CO2 it's bringing in. Now, forest density and grass density can be big. One of the big problems with grass is as it grows up, it starts to stall out. It doesn't have that big pull like corn
Agreed,
can.
agreed.
Yeah, but its stand density is much thicker.
But the argument we hear is you're destroying the forest, global warming, that theory, well.
There's some
I have
theory
to it.
Right.
But again, an acre of corn takes them products out of the air also. But has anybody ever measured, well, we're not totally ignoring it, they take a tremendous amount out of the air also.
The global warming thing is a whole nother side. The reality of it is it's very similar. The easiest one to understand is the sulfur aspect. And I'm going to say this very loosely because I believe in clean air, don't get me wrong. But as production averages in agriculture have gone skyrocket compared to when Grandpa was farming,
Oh, that's,
right? Double, triple. Our air increasingly had, because of petroleum, had more sulfur in it. But it needs sulfur. Now, here's the counterintuitive by the peer people out here. What happened when we cleaned all the sulfur up? What did the farmers do?
add sulfur to the
They
rest.
started applying.
They
Started applying.
didn't start applying sulfur, guys. They started applying more nitrogen.
Well,
Okay, that's what happened. Go look at the nitrogen curves since the sulfur got cleaned up. Why is that? Because sulfur is one of the 5 main components of an amino acid profile: hydrogen, carbon, sulfur, oxygen, and nitrogen. So nitrogen was recognized as the primary component. This is at no fault to the farmer. When sulfur began to get cleaned up, we had less sulfur and we had higher crop production. Sulfur wasn't recognized yet. So, and I can remember going to the University of Minnesota back in the mid-2000s, and they were just starting to catch on to this sulfur thing. And nitrogen was poured on because there was a response. And we began to put more and more and more nitrogen on, in actuality chasing the sulfur. But then exponentially, this is why you see such a yield boost out of sulfur. One day somebody said, we need more sulfur. So they started putting sulfur on, all of a sudden, boom, 20 bushel corn. Well, wait a minute, what happened? We completed the nitrogen profiles. And if you understand nitrogen's role in that 5-element amino acid profile, is it's a stabilizer. So we actually hold the nitrogen in the plant rather than the plant naturally gases it off. And naturally gassing it off actually attracts disease and insects. Upwinter herbicides, or upwinter insecticides, fungicides, pesticides, okay? Because we were over applying nitrogen. So that increase came into play. So when you go do these high sulfur tests in crops, you will see insecticide pressure come, or insect pressure come down, disease pressure come down, because it's stabilizing the N in the plant, and it doesn't need to gas itself off to self-regulate. The easiest way to prove it, just go put a whole bunch of nitrogen on corn, and what do you end up with? Wet corn.
Yeah. So what's a nitrogen stabilizer? What's the component of that?
So there's multiple ways to stabilize nitrogen. You've got denitrification, leaching, and volatilization. So leaching obviously through, volatilization is obviously up, and denitrification is in the conversion factor. So there's multiple ways to go after it depending on what you need to do. The main components in the world right now are sulfur, can help stabilize nitrogen. In a cold bond situation, it's not very effective, but it's better than nothing. So if you're using like 28 or 32 ATS, can help with that. It's not real good actually unless you heat it up and cool it down, and there are some products that are pretty expensive that have, like the old 20008S. Remember that one out of Nutriflow and Anderson's? The real things that are out there now, if you're using anhydrous or manure or what they call nitropyrins. Now it's not the way you really want to do it, but nitropyrin is a side, and it actually kills the bacteria that's responsible for the conversion of nitrates to ammoniated to nitrate forms. Slowing down that conversion can help with that, but they're absolutely horrible, horrible chemicals, and everybody hates using them. The secondary side to doing it is one that we actually we use a lot of this, is we actually use a biodegradable copolymer in calcium nitrate. Calcium nitrate is revered as one of the best nitrogen sources you can get, and the plant's always looking for calcium. So the copolymer can go right into manure applications, right into pits if you want to, and go into injection systems, anhydrous injection systems, 28, 32, just dump it right in and go. Very inexpensive. And what it does, it uses a biodegradable film that actually holds the 28 or manure or whatever in suspension right up to the root structure, and then it uses that calcium to drive it into the plant. That's our favorite. It's cheaper, it's more effective, and you don't have another side. That's the one we use all the time. We constantly get people getting off the instinct and insert. Now, if you want to get into, if you're top dressing something and not injecting it in, so people that are spraying on 28, things like that, then you need to go to the NBPTs, which is the nitrobutyl poly blah, 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 it's a long word. Those will actually help with that volatilization too. Those are our two favorite ways to do it because they're least invasive to the ground, to the biology, and they're actually very inexpensive. See, nitropyrin works on a per acre basis. So it's like a side. So it just takes $13.80 an acre to kill the bacteria, right? Versus when you get into the copolymers, they're based on application rate. So normal application rate at max might be $13.80 on a normal N application rate. So typically we can go in that $7 to $10 range, and we don't have to deal with all the crap of nitropyrins and an instinct. So the stabilizers, whether you get them in 28, urea, anhydrous, if you're buying them in urea, typically you'll see like Super U is nitropyrin based. Okay, ESN is a copolymer, only it surrounds the urea particle, just like these copolymers and like we sell on the liquid side. And then there are Nutrisphere is a nitrogen stabilizer, or Nutrisphere, And that is actually, believe it or not, it's a chelating agent. It sequesters nickel, and nickel is responsible for the conversion of nitrate or ammoniation to nitrates. So there's a multitude of different things on the market, and what it boils down to is three things. You're either going to have a chemical, a physical, or a biological way to control nitrogen. Just the same as the three chemical principles in the soil: chemical, physical, and biological. So that's the three ways that the industry has done it. Our favorite is the biodegradable biopolymers, because there's no inverse, and they're actually, believe it or not, one of the cheapest ways to do it. But it's also the newest technology. So.
Thanks for the chemistry
Yeah,
lesson.
professor.
20 years of doing this, you learn a thing or two. So.
I have a question that seems related to me, and that's I'm wondering with this cover crop thing that Olmsted has now. They've got this step-up plan, and essentially you can, if you let your cover crop grow from 12 inches to 24 inches, that's worth $20 more an acre. What's the rationale behind that? Or the reason? Or what?
It's the old agriculture scientific answers. It's, the sometimes and it depends, right? Is it worth it? It all depends on what you're trying to do. Do I think a crop this tall smothered out controls erosion any more than a crop this tall smothered out? Yeah, it's pretty minimal, right? But do I understand carbon complexity? So in carbon complexity, I'm beginning to determine a different function of what that plant's going to do as it's recycled back into the ground. Go back to carbon is king. So it's going to have an inherited amount more nutrients associated to it that it could have potentially extracted off clay particles or free nutrients that are laying there, whatever it is, and it's going to put it in that collated form. But again, as we associate size with getting older, right, in a plant, so as make that clear. So we associate that, but you have to understand that we begin to slow down the release of that nutrient. So you can make a case that technically, as this, you get more, there's a inherited decrease to one function and an inherited increase to another function in that plant, where maybe that $20 is actually, it should go the other way. Depending on what you're trying to do. If I'm trying to feed the next crop, I might be out $20. But if I'm trying to build the soil, I might have $20, right? So it goes back to the economics of the farmer and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. So by growing something from 12 inches to 24 inches, and I'm just going to say an average thing, just an average crop, you will complex more carbons, you will inherently pull in more nutrients from the soil and the sun and the air, right? You will change, well, we talked about the complexity of that carbon aspect. You could potentially, minimize a little more erosion or whatever that might be, and you have the long-term effect of building potentially more humus in the soil. So organic matter is it's a great thing, but ultimately there are 4 stages you have to go through in the degradation of complex carbons to get to humus. If you go out and spray a bunch of 28 on there and zap that stuff, you'll oxidize the minerals, you gas the CO2 off in the atmosphere, you'll get rid of the trash, but you will not make humus. And ultimately you want to make humus. So that's the difficult part. So if it creates a negative effect by letting more material come in and they can't get soil to seed contact in their next crop or whatever it is, they might come back and say, well, that was negative, I can't do that anymore. Is it worth $20? It might be worth $1,000. We don't know, depending on what they want to do.
Weed suppression is like the other thing for organic guys. I think they want that big mat to lay down. Because I've actually planted beans and tall headed out stuff, but I didn't get quite as good a yield even as chopping it off when it was just in the boot stage.
Yeah.
But it could have been a different year too. So
well, you got to remember that big mat that you just grew up. What's the first thing it went after? It went after all the soluble nutrients. It went after everything the crop you got growing in there wants, making that crop have to work harder to go find what it needs. So there's an advantage and disadvantage on the economics of this, and that's where, as farmers, landowners, growers, whatever, they have to kind of find that happy medium. And this is why I'm such a big advocate of why I don't like one size fits all plans, because what Matt struggles with is different than what you struggle with, is different than you struggle with, different than when my guys out in western Minnesota or Nebraska or Illinois or Michigan, they're just take a drive to Michigan sometime, deal with what they, go to southern Iowa, you wanna talk about soil that looks the color of your shirt, actually more like the color of your shirt. I mean, it's crazy stuff to farm. So everybody's got a different thing, and that's, you have to, the idiosyncrasies that come with that, so this one size fits all. That's why you hear me say, don't try to make everybody cover crops at no-till.
Right.
Because I guarantee you, the first guy that gets out is the little guy. I don't want to see the little guy get out. So, all right, anyway. Bowser, Clean Water Fund application update.
Well, we had applied in, I think it was July, when they had the RFP, and I had submitted a grant application for well ceilings, and I listened in on the meeting this morning, and it was approved, so we will be getting a new grant coming down the pike. So, and also I did one for Winona County, and I got that for Altura to seal one of their wells that's not being used right now. It's a risk. So that was good. Got approved.
Good. 2022 project accomplishments.
Yeah, at the
An
end of the
overview.
packet. Yeah, so I just had an overview of what done this year. We finished up the 319 grant, and then also working on the drinking water protection grant, and then starting to do these local advisory teams. And that's pretty much it for that.
Okay.
Pass that down, Josh.
Probably only need one of them.
Yeah, you have to
Pull
figure out
out.
which one it is.
We'll pull out which one it is. So. I don't know who this Matt Flynn guy is, but apparently he gets a plaque. We can do that when we're done too, if you.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, so we actually got Matt and Steve both some plaques for just recognition of all the years, 22 years.
Well, there was a 4-year hiatus where Judy Oley was
Sure.
She was here.
here for the Whitewater, so.
Yeah. No, Judy. But I've always, like I say, I've always enjoyed this group. It's been a pleasure. So,
I know, I've enjoyed having you as
So-
chair, and it's been,
like I say, we're kind of laid back. Let's put
Thank
it
you.
that way.
Yeah, appreciate it. Just gonna shake your hand.
And a lot of our meetings, but it's a way better atmosphere with something like this. And no, I've always enjoyed this. No,
That's good. Well, thank you.
getting some
very
things
much.
done. You're not complaining about that, are you? Get the projects done.
Yeah.
Enough studies, more projects is
Yeah.
my
I
as
like
you go
it.
forth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So your replacement is Laura?
Laura
Laurel Pilecki Smith, newly elected commissioner.
She's from downtown Rochester, so there'll be a different.
I thought maybe they would, the Rossman that was elected.
Michelle.
Yeah,
I don't know how, what we've done in the past is you just kind of pick what you like to do,
okay.
but then the chairperson has the final say to rearrange them.
Okay.
There might be some switching, that's been
Sure.
done before too.
Yeah, but
And
just
then,
a city girl on a more rural watershed.
but no, she's a nice lady,
Maybe good.
so it might be a different perspective. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know, 2 of us.
Yeah, we gotta keep us rural boys in here.
Yeah.
Keep the majority.
But that's her district. District
Yeah.
1 is
Okay.
basically the core of Rochester, and
Mhm.
that's how what she represents. So,
Be all right. Hopefully we can learn something from her, and maybe she can learn something from us. so.
And
That
that
would be
was
good.
something, I'm sure you probably know this, but we heard up at the meeting that this is like the first time in probably state's history where there's so many representatives from the city or metropolitan type districts that for like the soil and water funding, even if we had every person that really represents rural people be positive for that, it still wouldn't be enough votes.
no, you'll never all vote the metro area. That's history, that's how they
Yeah.
kind of stick together. So, You'll never do that in the state legislators or the urban counties. They'll never. But I got to admit, my Homestead County counterparts, they basically, what do you think in the rural areas? And that's kind of the direction we've have done over the years. The only thing that they haven't, when they talk about the small cities and Homestead, they're not small anymore. The Sturtvilles and Byrons will be 10,000 people in about 10 years. They're 6, 7. That's not small no more. They'll be the size of Albert Lee's, Austin's, Winona's, and they have a different, they see things differently. So that's what probably the change in dynamics of Homestead is. Small cities aren't small anymore.
You really don't have small, I mean, there's a few.
Well, yeah, but Dover,
Yeah,
Verona, 2,000 or 3,000, Chatfield's half. Well, I don't say Charles, but again, when you get to the population of a thing like Byron and Sturteville, your bigger industries are looking at them towns now because what do you have to offer, and they want that growth. So the next thing you'll see is a Walmart or Target, maybe in these towns, and I know they're looking. How do suburbs get created? Exactly that way, because it's economics to them too.
Yep. The dynamics change of Rochester and the suburbs.
Yes. And I was just in Sturgill last night, and then there's things that they would like that Rochester seems to. Why do they get it? And again, then you run into politics. My world, in your world, I'd say I need 4 votes. You need 3 votes. Bob needs 3 votes. You learn that real fast. But my board members have been very grateful. They kind of what I thought would be a good thing to do, they're quite receptive to it. So, which has been nice. So, but Michelle Rossman, she's a real background. Brian Mueller does too. But Olmsted's becoming such an urban county. Suburban development is so popular now, especially after COVID. That's a way of life still, and people want it, and they'll pay. So you'll see more of that over the next years, decade.
Well, that's even back when I was mayor of Altura. I kept saying over and over in these bedroom communities, the mushroom effect that we didn't really see it out of Winona, but obviously Rochester getting, I called it the border town, the border ridge town, Lewiston, Altura, kind of through that area. And then you get down into Stockton and Rolling Stone, that was really more Winona based, and we were right at the top. And how will continue to push out over the years. And so even in the last 6 years since I've been away from there, Lewiston is actually having a meeting coming up here for the businesses. I've been heavily pushing this business thing because your brother's ex-building and saying, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Where's the development? And I've been going to the EDAs and having meetings with CETA. And so now they're putting together this kind of business meeting because I keep saying, you're either going to look good or you're not going to look good. And if you don't look good, they're coming to St. Charles, And now we just got to figure out how to move that Homestead line in St. Charles.
St. Charles?
It's too close.
No, businesses, they're no fools. They look at,
Absolutely.
they take the road counts and what TIF districts, and they consider all that stuff into their business portfolio.
Absolutely.
And so Rochester, you get 2 high prices in one town, I'll just go down the road 10 miles.
Yep.
And you'll see a lot of that now in Olmsted County coming forward.
Starting to
Move, especially on a 4-lane road.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I can see that.
yeah. So, but we still have the rural lifestyle, which is very popular, which is great. Tried to do that. I like it, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but when you got to pay $200,000 lot, Rochester is not uncommon in some parts. I can go outside the town and buy 20 acres.
Yeah.
I'll buy that. So
Right.
that will happen much more. So
Price of that 40 acres, what's the minimum acre size to build?
it depends what your zone. Olmsted is mostly the rural A1, A2, A3. So A1 is 80 acres, A2 is 40, give or take, and A3 is 10 or less.
Mhm.
It just depends how it's zoned, the history of it. So, but,
Yeah, that's,
dynamics.
I think you're gonna see a demand from the community to be able to do more of that.
Oh, that's coming. Oh, it's
Big time.
big demand.
And, you know, whether that's, you know, protecting farmland and different things like that. And again, Winona County's a little more challenging with all the bluffs and, you know, all the stuff that we got going on, just the unique.
Usually the farmland now, just a little history. That isn't too bad. Before we left, we kind of redid our land use plan. And I was the one thing I was protect the feedlots, make that half-mile buffer. Make the buffer. The farmland, my neighborhood is mainly, they're not farmers anymore, they rent it out.
Yeah.
They just live there.
Yeah.
So the farmland is more compatible. It's the feedlot buffer that gets
Smells,
smell,
looks, and
ugly,
all
and all
that.
that. So we got the buffer, so if you're there, I think that's very important to people. Well, I was here, so don't zone me out.
Yeah,
Right.
So,
don't start hollering at me for what
yeah,
I'm
don't holler
doing.
at me, because, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I got cows, so, yeah, but it's changed. South through Minnesota's changing,
Oh, big time.
growing, as long as the mail grows, everybody else grows.
Mhm.
There are 39,000 employees now in mail. That's a lot of
That's a
people.
lot of people. So that's a lot of people. Population of Winona County is only 52.
I don't know.
50,
Well, Winona's,
27.
yeah,
I think it's 52. It's right on 52.
I don't know if it's that much, but,
I thought it was 52.
okay.
Well, last time I looked at the census, so God, look at it, maybe it's 49, 48, 49.
Mhm.
I thought it was cracked over 50.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
You know,
What's that?
From a farmer's perspective, it's nice when government kind of has your back, because I held an R in that field south of you there one time, and I got turned in. So then I think Steve, what is he was a pollution, I can't think of
Oh,
it.
Steve Schmidt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Steve Schmidt called me up, came out, we looked at it. I was proper set back from the waterway and everything, and he said he was just gonna tell me, if you don't like the smell, you shouldn't live in the country. But hopefully that continues.
Yeah.
I mean, to some respects, because,
I'll tell you, some unpopular decisions over my life, I've been turned in on things, erosion, feedlot. There's no basis to it, but you still had to, now, you know,
Guilty until proven innocent.
and which I didn't appreciate, people doing that. But again, what's wrong? But you gotta go through all the format, all that stuff, because there was somebody that didn't like what you did. But, so be it, so,
Yeah.
warning you.
Oh, I know. I know the hell that's coming. We just, you just stand here, you know, you do what's right. You know,
Yeah.
you just,
Yeah.
that's the only
Yeah.
thing, what you think is right, you just keep doing
I
it.
can agree with Matt, so far it's been enjoyable.
Yeah.
Some days are better than others, but
I can take constructive criticism, I can take all that stuff, but sometimes when you just have blatant things like that, where, you know, where was your name on that board? If you said you failed too, how come your name wasn't on it?
Yeah.
You know, no, you're pointing fingers, you're deliberately doing what you're doing. So just knock it off. We don't need little kindergarten presentations like that. The rest of it was pretty good. I didn't appreciate the fish kill capital comment either. I let that one go. That's just me. All right, that to me, that just says, everybody that's ever been in SWCD's, you know, I mean, that's just an insult.
Did you see the comment letters about SWCDs from him?
Okay, Mr. Jacob, what do you have to say today? Oh, that's right, you're not here.
Yeah, he's gonna-
I'm getting sunburned.
Yeah.
Ooh, Colin, I'm hot.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, we were down the Keys last year, went down to Miami and we went to the Keys and we made a couple trips down there last year. We looked at going down to Cape Coral again and we decided it's gotta be an absolute mess still. They still had curfews on it. So I'm assuming the Keys must be better. Okay, agency reports.
I have no updates.
no updates, and nobody's here, so, all right. Well, the next meeting is February 17th, which I will be in Jamaica myself, so,
What's wrong?
Must be.
You're not retired.
So we can give you whatever office,
what's that?
we can give you whatever office you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Next time. Yeah.
Whatever job.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
There you go. Only proper for the.
Yeah, I leave it. Happy trail.
Yeah.
Happy trail.